I got up this morning and I thought that I wanted to look like a failed actor turned drama teacher. And I think I've achieved that. Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and today I can't really see as I'm going to be talking about anything in particular. I am reaching the final 3 days, well, there's only 2 full days left after this, of my holiday from work. And I expected to have achieved tons more by now. And that's how I feel about any time I book away from work, that this is going to be it. I am going to finish that novel. I'm going to get all this stuff read. I'm going to work really hard on Duolingo. I'm going to bake. I'm going to cook. And it's going to be this all-round fantastic time where I complete all of the things that I want to do that otherwise I wouldn't do because of work. I even thought that in these past 2 weeks off, I would manage to fix my sleeping pattern. I did not. Indeed, if anything, my sleeping pattern has got worse because I feel like I can allow myself to stay up until my brain falls to sleep. So I will still be there at 3 in the morning sometimes, having not slept yet, and then getting up at 9 o'clock thinking, yes, I am refreshed, and I'm not refreshed. And also, I have this problem that if I haven't got stuff done by 12 o'clock, writing or reading, then I feel as though that's the entire day lost and it's not going to happen that day. That being said, if you followed my reading vlogs, then you know that reading has not been the priority over the last fortnight. Indeed, it hasn't happened that much. I thought I would fill my days with Victorian works, and I haven't. It's not for want of trying, it's just not wanting to. I feel like I give myself pressure because I think that on Booktube we like to look at how many books a person is reading and we decide whether or not they're a reader we ought to listen to based on the amount of books that they read. When I put up a wrap-up and there's only 3 or 4 books in it, and there I've only read 1 book a week, it's this thing of there's not much variety there, and there's not really much to talk about, and also, can you trust the opinion of somebody who isn't reading in every spare moment of their time if all they ever do is talk about books? And so I put this pressure on myself to try and get tons read, and then don't do so. I mentioned in a video somewhere where I need to have this conversation with myself about how sometimes reading slower actually leads to me as a reader absorbing a text more, interacting with that text more, and understanding what I believe the author was getting at. I know that I can read a book in a certain time frame, such as The Quickening by Rhiannon. I know that this is a book where I can read about 2 pages a minute, and by rights I could finish this in 3 hours, but I haven't done. I have read 100 pages, put the book down, come back to it, read another 100 pages, and this hasn't been something that's happened over one day. I've been reading this book for a week now, but there is still this thing where I have started to treat a book how Joy Winkler says that she read my book, An Heir to Murder, where she said she can always tell when a book is good when she puts it down and the characters are still speaking in her head. I have had that happen with certain books. With David Copperfield, I was still thinking about these characters all the time. They filled my life, and I wanted to talk about this book with everybody because I just needed to sometimes rant about characters' behaviour, and they become very real to me through reading slowly. But if I read a book quickly, oftentimes I can end up forgetting certain plot points. Indeed, there have been times where people have asked me questions in the comments of books before, in the comments when I've reviewed a book before, and I will have to say to them, I'm sorry, but it's been a long time since I read this book. I actually can't remember. And it comes from this space of I don't absorb everything that was there, or I miss things, I miss hints towards stuff. To mention The Quickening again, with this book and putting this book aside and allowing myself to dwell on it, I've been able to see references to other works and then begin to compare and contrast them, which I think is really good, and again adds to this sense of interaction. But I am reading a lot slower, so then I have this same conversation with myself where I think, should I prioritise shorter books and fill up a wrap up that way and pretend as though I've got a lot of stuff to talk about, or should I just admit that actually I don't mind reading so slowly because I'm still reading more now than a few years ago. It's just that it now takes me more time. I forget that I perhaps have more responsibilities and more things that I do now than I did when I would just spend every free moment reading, which was the case when I was at uni. And even when I left and I first got this job, the only thing I ever did was stay at home and read. There have been days where I haven't read and I've done other things, and then I've thought, it's okay. So I wanted to really watch Onward, the Disney film, and I planned to watch that last Tuesday, but because I thought it's Victober I need to read, I didn't end up watching it until Sunday just gone. There are things that I want to watch and times I will watch, even Booktube, and I'll think, but really, you have this other thing to do. But it is, I think I'm going to have to just admit, it is okay to have other things going on in your life. Yes, I love books, but not reading tons of books does not mean I am no longer a reader. It does not mean that I am any less than somebody who's out there reading 30 books a month. It just means that I have a different pace of reading now. I enjoy other things, and it's okay to enjoy other things because I spent ages trying to find other wants and hobbies. Also, audiobooks had a lot to answer for back when I was doing more walks along the canal, because I just put an audiobook in and go for a walk for an hour or two, and so you can get through quite a lot of short audiobooks that way. Terry Pratchett filled up a lot of walks down the canal, as did some non-fiction books. And some days when I have housework to do, that's where audiobooks came in. So I am perhaps only reading the same amount of physical books that I always was reading. I'm just noticing more the lack of lines filled in my journal. I think it also comes down to the fact that I forget last year, when I was really suffering with that concussion and was very ill for the first 2 months of the year, all I did was basically lie in bed listening to audiobooks for 2 months. That's where there was a huge boost in the amount of books read. That's what's going on in my life in relation to reading. There's a lot of thought about reading and not reading, reading slower as opposed to reading faster, how much of a book I'm taking in, what sort of reader I am I critical, am I not critical, do I just read for the journey? I talked about DNFing books, but then there are still books that I dislike that I don't DNF. There is a lot going on in this head, and you can probably understand my insomnia now. Just to link back to what I was previously talking about, you can probably understand why I am lying awake at night and what I am thinking about. The last 2 weeks have actually ended up being more filled with music, and today has been one of those days in particular where we are now about 2:30, if not 3 o'clock, and all I have done today is listen to music. So what had happened was, I got up and Ariana Grande had released this song called Positions. Now, I am not the biggest Ariana Grande fan, just putting that out there. You probably won't see me listening to her music an awful lot, but when I think something might be a bit cultural and someone might speak to me about it, I like to have a tiny bit of an opinion to go forward. So I listened to this song, and I honestly thought she was singing in Spanish because I couldn't understand the words she was saying. So when I found out that it wasn't a foreign song, I was surprised. And apparently it's because she has something called loose diction when she sings. well, it's not for me. It's not for me, lads. Won't be listening to it again. But Little Mix came up. Again, not the biggest fan, but they are a bit in the zeitgeist at the moment with their TV show, so I gave that a watch. It was alright. But then I see that Rina Sawayama has put a making of her recent album. Now, you know me. The whole reason I created the making of An Heir to Murder is because I love watching a making of video. Even if I'm not going to have anything to do with the art afterwards, even if I'm not going to watch or support the artist, the writer, the director, any of that, I love seeing how stuff is made. Don't know why. There was a thing when I was younger that used to show you how shoes were made, and I would watch that all the time because I found it fascinating. So I watched this video, and then it reminded me that I haven't actually listened to the album. So I ended up listening to that album. But actually, that's the second album I listened to today, because I watched a video of Trixie Mattel performing last Halloween, found out she was performing to a Kim Petras song, and it was about eating somebody's heart, and I was like, do you know what? That might be my vibe, might that. I mean, look at me today, a bit all dark colours, and I always think that I'm kind of like the love child between Lurch and Morticia. I listened to Kim Petras' album as well. It's strange how I find myself inspired, because in the Cozy Reading Night, Victober vlog weird thing mashup that's about to come your way, I talked about Nudibranch by Irenosen Okojie, and how this book is somewhat subversive. It has extremely dark moments hidden beneath the surface of otherwise ordinary tales, and I quite adored this book. It was a gift from Charlie Brooke. Read it and thought, should I be writing stuff that's darker? I listened to this Kim Petras album, and it inspired me in this way where I wanted to be writing lyrics. Now, as evidenced by Last Christmas, I write some pretty terrible, angsty, teenage-style lyrics. Recently this year, I have written more lyrics than I had done since I was 23. I don't usually share them, I keep them away, but I just like the sensation of having something finished, and it gives me the sense of completion, sort of like when I'm writing poetry as well. It's something I like to do alongside writing a longer project, because it just gives me that sense of completion, and I can move forward with the novel then. I then ended up being inspired to be... I question, and I always question this, whether I will ever be able to make that switch from purely writing comedy. Is comedy... if you didn't know, the Doris books are primarily comedies. The things that I have planned are all based around either having comedy at its core or being darker stories with comic moments. I feel like comedy always takes the edge off, and I can never see myself losing that. I think I have a strong enough voice now, but as it develops, it might be a case of just having somewhat normal Charlie prose with dashes of humour here and there. But then it's the stories I'm telling as well. Are my stories always going to be everyday stories? Will I ever write something like Flames by Robbie Arnott, which I adored, and that inspired me to be creative. It inspired the way I considered writing a book that I have been planning since 2014. Then I begin to question, will I ever write that book? Because my time is now dedicated to finishing Our Doris. I remembered that I've now been rewriting the children's book for 3 years. After Our Doris, I'm planning on writing 2 radio plays, because if you didn't know, I was uploading a episode of my radio play to my Ko-fi page every Monday. Then I discovered that episodes 5 and 6 were not on my external hard drive. I don't know why, I don't know where they are, I don't know where they exist, but they are missing. So the only thing I can do is rewrite those episodes. Fine, I've no problem with that. So I have to write Our Doris, I have to write these 2 episodes now, but then I'd also planned on finally writing the adaptation of Charity Begins and turning that into a sequel novel. And you will have met some of these characters in Indisputably Doris and An Heir to Murder. So all 3 main characters have now been seen in my books, and I'm planning on bringing them back for Charity Begins, which is probably set... I think it's set after An Heir to Murder and after Indisputably Doris. I think. I'd have to check all my plans. And that was my plan to write after Royally Doris before going back in with the Alice Valentine books. So my time is then dedicated to writing another 4 Alice Valentine books at least. Originally I had this plan for 10, but there's a certain aspect to the story that I'm not sure can now work for 10 books, and I'm not sure I could keep the audience invested long enough. So I'm planning on doing a little jiggery pokery and moving things around so that one story thread's complete by the 5th one, and should I wish to continue after that, I have these other stories planned, and I will perhaps feel somewhat more at ease once this story thread is complete. It's this case of time management that I keep coming back to. Especially whilst I've been off, I've noticed that the day seems to get away from me, and I don't know why. I will make plans and I will set times for everything to happen, but things take longer than I think they will. I end up constantly having to push things back, which isn't how I want to be spending my time. So when I listened to that Kim Petras album earlier today, I decided I could listen to that because I was doing the washing up and doing housework. Oh, I should also say I bought myself some new headphones earlier this week so I could finally listen to music and audiobooks again. I'd actually been hoping someone would buy me them for my birthday, which is why it's now October and I hadn't bought them because my family are just awful. So I now have headphones and I listened to that and I was doing housework, but that hadn't been on the plan for today. My plan for today was to finally finish reading The Quickening by Rhiannon Ward, to enter into cozy reading night with a blank slate. I planned this video as well. I was going to record this video at 11 o'clock, but my father came home earlier than expected and I forgot that my sister was off work today, so I waited for everyone to come home knowing they were going up the field for a set amount of time. And as evidenced by something that happened earlier this year, even when I'm not at work and I have a whole load of months free time, I still don't write. I know that I am my own worst enemy when it comes to not just critiquing myself, but definitely in this moment critiquing myself, but looking at how I work. If I am able to write 10,000 words one day, I have a particularly good writing day, and the next one I only write 2,000, I will question, why aren't you writing 10,000 words every day? Because you could have... I can't do that maths. I can't. You would have 70,000 words by the end of a week. And so that's 140,000. You could have a novel completed every 2 weeks, and 52 weeks in the year, you could have 26 new novels written by the end of the year. So that's what I say to myself. I'm like, why haven't you written 26 novels this year? You know, like sat over here thinking I'm the next James Patterson. And yes, that was shade towards James Patterson. I write a lot of plans as I'm writing. And so I will write a plan and then something will happen and it means a deviation from the plan, or I'll recognise something that could be changed to improve the story, enhance the story. And so I'm constantly thinking about story ideas, constantly writing them down and working stuff out. And then it comes to putting them on the page and it's a bit difficult, and I'm constantly having rewrites, and there are sections I rip out and put new stuff in there all throughout the process of writing. And I'm now past the halfway point with Royally Doris, really, but it's still so slow going. And another part of that comes from the fact that I didn't get a proper sensation of finishing with an heir to murder. Usually, such as with Our Doris and Indisputably Doris, there's this sort of framework that I go by. And let's just remember that I always forget Doris Ahoy exists. Let's just acknowledge that I'm a terrible parent and I forget about one of my children, right? With Our Doris, I toured the book around, very successful. I then took a break from writing when I had a minor breakdown at the end of 2015, start of 2016, went back into Indisputably Doris. Indisputably Doris, released that, had a bit of a crappy time with the tour, but still did that, and had this sense of completion, like I'd done what I could, now move on to the next thing. And I did, and that was a children's book. And then whilst I was writing that, I had this sensation, well, it's not working, let's move on to something else. I wrote An Heir to Murder. An Heir to Murder finished, I moved on to Doris Ahoy. Doris Ahoy finished, and I've been writing Royally Doris now for over a year. But with An Heir to Murder, when I released that, I had such grand plans for it. And not being able to fulfill those plans and not being able to tour around and see everybody leaves me with this feeling like it's unfinished. Like things just aren't going to plan. And I say that all the time. And the thing is as well, that the people who have read An Heir to Murder have been incredibly kind. And so many people have said it's my best book. And, you know, I hired an editor for that. Dane did a really good job with that. And he talked me through stuff and helped me still have a northern voice there, but make it work more as a piece of writing. I just feel like so much work went into that book over a period of 2 years, and nobody is able to see it because of everything going on in the world. We also have the fact, when I talk about Booktube, so something I've been doing along the sides of not just recording the vlogs every week, I have been getting tagged in a lot of things. And I have been recording the tag videos and those responses, and they're sitting on my computer, not just because editing them takes me time, because I like to put stuff over it when I'm looking at the computer and change stuff, but also because I noticed that every week I just seem to be uploading tag after tag after tag, and there was no differentiation. I'm not talking about individual books anymore, and everything waits to my wrap up, and 4 weeks will disappear, and I'm like, well, now all we can do is talk about the books that we've read, because there's no way that review's happening. I did record a review of After Dark by Haruki Murakami back in July, and that'll never see the light of day. It won't see the light of day because it was July. So many videos just sit on my computer, just knowing that they're never going to get edited. And that's time management, and that's because I sometimes think the moment has passed. Sometimes with a Woolgathering video in particular, I can worry that they're too maudlin and they talk about pain too much, or they talk about mental health too much, and I don't think that they're the sort of things people want in their lives at the moment. It's a bit like with Misery Memoir. If you remember, there was a huge thing on Misery Memoir, you know, such as stuff about abusive parents, abusive systems, and they became really popular for a while and spawned this whole thing of people creating false misery and writing about that as well. People adored those books. They ate them up. It was compulsive. They stopped being so popular when the recession hit the UK back in 2010 because people wanted lighter, brighter stuff. And every time there seems to be some sort of huge tragedy in the world, there seems to be this influx of stuff being written that is happier and makes people feel better to be on the planet. And I feel like when I upload a Woolgathering video that is particularly sad, all it's doing is kind of just adding to misery that everybody is experiencing in the world at the moment. It's that case of looking at myself, recognising my own sadness and thinking, do you know what? I can be sad over here and I can record this video and I can talk about it, but that video doesn't have to be seen by the public, because the public have enough going on in the world. I don't need to mention anything wrong in the state of the world at the moment, because you can probably think about 50,000 reasons the world is going a bit to shit. Saying all that, I have now finally watched the Disney film Onward. It's about two brothers who accidentally they mean to resurrect the entirety of the father, but they only resurrect the bottom half of him. A bit of comedy, fantasy, adventure, somewhat more emotional than I expected. It's a film about brotherhood and the love between siblings. It was my favourite Disney film of recent years. Just to talk about Booktube a tiny bit more, I considered NaNoWriMo again, you know. National Novel Writing Month. It has been years since I participated in that. I think it was actually 2015 mid-breakdown Charlie that last tried and attempted in 2015. I thought I would try and write a travel journal of my time in Rome and release that. I'd got into my head that I really needed to be publishing something quickly. Did that, got over emotional, quit writing. Haven't looked at NaNoWriMo since, because I feel like that sense of competition doesn't work well for me. But I did consider trying to use the month of November to get as much written of the final Doris book as possible. And then I realised it's been 3 years now since I started the rewrite of the children's book. So I don't know where to focus my energies. I think with the children's book, I dip in and out of that because it provides me with this relief and I know where that story is going. It's a rewrite and it's become a nice pastime alongside the other works that I am still planning on independently publishing. I also feel like I have Our Doris further along than the rewrite. In terms of the rewrite, I actually only have 7 chapters left to write. 6 chapters left to write, actually. 6 chapters left to write of the children's book. And that's about 12,000 words and it will be done. In terms of Doris, I have sugar. I have about 40 to 50,000 words left to write of that, which was why I thought NaNoWriMo, but I didn't think of using the actual National Novel Writing Month part of it, trying to hit all of the things they want you to hit, just focusing on writing as much as I could in November and maybe doing the odd writing vlog here or there. It's difficult because also we're heading towards Christmas time and I don't see it as being as huge as every other year for people. Indeed, I was thinking about Vlogmas and rewatching a few videos recently from last year when I was happier and more content with life. And I just know that work gets busy, but I also know that I still have 4 days holiday that I need to take before the end of the year. And I can feel that being enforced by head office. So I wonder whether to just ask work whether I could have a week or two, well, a week and a day off in November to get some writing done as well. I chose not to say something then that I was going to say with relation to my writing because I worry that when I talk about writing, I'm going to become one of those people who talks about writing and doesn't write. And I say this all the time. I never want to be the person who just talks about getting his works finished. And that's why I've stopped talking so much. You might not have noticed it, but I know I have been talking less about what I'm writing and just trying to get that stuff done, which is why there haven't been so many Woolgathering videos recently, because I was always saying, what are you reading, what are you writing, what you're watching, what you're listening to, which I do care about. Send me any recommendations at all. If you need writing help, then feel free to get in touch with me. Even if it's just saying hello, that's fine. I try not to talk about it in order that I get so excited about the book that I write the book. I think not being able to go to the writers group as much has sapped my creativity a bit because I don't have people constantly cheerleading me. I'm just trying to kind of enforce this behaviour myself. I don't know, I'm like a dog or something else that constantly needs rewards for doing the smallest thing. Or is that just what being a man is? Maybe that's the way the world is. Maybe just because the world has taught me that as a man I should be rewarded for every small thing, I believe that that's the way I have to go in order to complete any sort of work, when in actual fact I should just write the bloody thing and have the reward be people reading my book and either hating it or loving it, but either way interacting with my text and my words. Maybe that's what I should have been doing all along. And that's why we create Woolgathering videos, because they help me ramble and rant and figure out what I am considering about the world. They are me generally daydreaming about stuff, and you just get to see this outpouring of thought on camera when I choose to actually share them. Today, I plan on finishing The Quickening by Rhiannon, a gothic tale for autumn. I plan on participating in cozy reading night, and then I plan on switching everything off and writing something set in a hospital. If you have any thoughts about my thoughts in this video, then feel free to share them in the comments. I hope that you got something out of this video besides sheer boredom, even if it was just appealing to some weird, depraved fetish. I am happy to enable you, and until next time, that is all.